Look at her. Even her tears are pathetic.
Look at her. Even her tears are pathetic, he sneered, wiping his hand after striking her, as his friends burst into laughter. To them, she was the perfect joke, the quiet, gentle wife with no power, no voice, and no backbone. They mocked her clothes, they mocked her dignity, and they mocked her right in her own home. And she took it. Every insult, every humiliation, and every moment they thought she was weak. Because they didn't know who she really was. They didn't know about the years of discipline she had buried beneath silence. They didn't know the strength she carried behind her calm eyes. They didn't know the fire she had been holding back out of love, a love that no longer existed. So when she finally lifted her head, when she finally stood up, and when she finally let go of everything she had been holding in, those same men who laughed at her faced the greatest humiliation of their lives. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the one you should fear the most. And sometimes the woman you think you've broken is the one who teaches you the meaning of regret. Hello, family. Welcome back. Before we begin, I have a small but heartfelt request. Please, subscribe. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Every time you click that button, you're helping us share voices that would otherwise be forgotten, and stories that deserve to be heard. And in the comments, tell us where you're watching from, because together, we are not just telling stories, we are keeping hope alive. Emily always made the house feel calmer than it had any right to be. Mark said once that he liked that about her, that she balanced him out. Though lately he said it with a tone that made her feel more like furniture than a partner. Still, she moved quietly through the morning, fixing coffee just how he liked it, even though he rarely thanked her anymore. She didn't do it for gratitude. She did it because keeping the peace had become a habit she couldn't shake. The sun wasn't even up when Mark came downstairs. He looked tired, not in the drained from work way, but in the I did something I don't want to explain way. His shirt was the same one he'd worn yesterday. Emily felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her voice steady. "You didn't come home last night." He didn't stop walking. He didn't look at her. Just grabbed the travel mug she had set out and filled it halfway. "I stayed at Jim's," he said, as if that ended the conversation. "You could have called," she said softly. He rolled his eyes. "Emily, please don't start. I was exhausted. I crashed on his couch. It's not a big deal." She didn't argue. She just nodded, the way she always did, though the lie scratched at her. Jim lived 20 minutes away. Mark had never once stayed there overnight, but she didn't press. Him didn't follow the spark of suspicion that fluttered in her chest. She'd trained herself to let things go. She had learned long ago that reacting made things worse. Mark brushed past her on his way to the door. "I have a long day. Don't wait up tonight, either." Her breath caught for a second. Not again. But she swallowed the question and gave him a quiet, "Okay." He didn't kiss her goodbye. After the door shut, she let herself exhale. The kitchen felt bigger when he wasn't in it, like the walls weren't trying so hard to stay upright. She stared at the cooling coffee pot, then turned away before the familiar heaviness settled in. The day would demand more from her than she felt ready to give. She cleaned, folded laundry, and answered messages from Linda, each one a reminder that she had married into a world that saw her as temporary. Linda liked to disguise insults as advice, and today's message was no exception. "Remember the dinner tonight. Wear something respectable. Don't make Mark look careless. Emily typed back a polite response. Of course, I'll be ready. She didn't mention that she had already set aside a dress Linda approved of, one she bought long ago because Linda had said it made Emily look like she belonged. Belonging in that family came with conditions she never fully understood. By evening she had the dining room prepped, the food warmed and the table set with the expensive plates Mark's mother insisted they use whenever guests came over. Mark arrived late, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't his usual. Emily pretended not to notice. You look presentable, he said, glancing at her dress. Thank you, she answered, though the compliment landed like a cold coin in her hand. Guests arrived soon after. Linda entered first, her smile thin but polished. Emily, dear, she said, kissing the air near Emily's cheek. You did well setting things up. I wasn't sure you'd managed the tableware correctly. Emily offered a small smile. I remembered how you showed me. Linda nodded in a way that made it clear she took full credit for any success. Mark's sister Karen followed. She barely hid her smirk as she looked Emily up and down. Cute dress. Very modest. Emily forced herself to breathe through the sting. Karen had a talent for making harmless words feel like insults. Dinner began with polite conversation, but it didn't stay polite long. Linda had never accepted that her son married a woman without a college degree, without the pedigree she wanted for the family image. And tonight, she seemed determined to make that point again. So, Emily, Linda said after a sip of wine, have you given any thought to taking evening classes? Something to improve your prospects? Emily felt her fork pause mid-air. I haven't made any decisions yet. Well, it would help, Linda said. Mark works so hard. It would be nice if you contributed more than household chores. Women today should be ambitious. Karen let out a laugh. Mum, we both know Emily's not exactly the ambitious type. She's simple. The table went quiet for a moment. Emily felt heat rise up her neck, but she kept her face still. Silence was the safest choice. Silence kept the storm from rising. Mark didn't defend her. Instead, he said, They're right, Em. You could do more if you tried. Linda reached across the table and patted Mark's hand. He needs a partner who matches him. That's all we're saying. Emily's heart tightened, but she forced a nod, even though she felt small, almost invisible. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. After dessert, she began clearing plates. In the kitchen, Linda followed her in. You're lucky, you know, she said without looking at Emily. Men like Mark don't come around often. You should stay grateful. There it was, another blow wrapped in a gentle tone. Emily just murmured, I know, and carried the plates to the sink. Lucky, grateful, simple. Words that chipped at her one piece at a time. When the guests left, Mark didn't ask how she felt. He just loosened his tie and said, That wasn't so hard, was it? Mum just wants the best for us. You take things too personally. She didn't answer. She was afraid her voice would shake if she tried. He went upstairs, leaving her alone in the kitchen. She stood there for a long minute, hands on the counter, letting her breath steady. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in a long time. Years ago, she used to fight back, not with words, with discipline, with precision, with a strength that came from training before dawn and pushing her body past its limits. Her Sifu once told her she had a spark inside her that could burn down fear. But after the accident, the one that changed everything, She walked away from all of it. She buried that part of herself deep enough that even she could forget it. Mark had never seen that version of her. He didn't know she wasn't fragile. He didn't know her silence wasn't born from weakness, but from a choice she made long before she met him. She wondered now if keeping that part of herself hidden had been a mistake. 2 days later, the tension in the house sat heavier than usual. Mark had been avoiding conversation, always on his phone, always stepping outside to take calls. When Emily asked him if everything was okay, he brushed her off. "Just work," he said. That same lie again, that same tired tone. By late afternoon, she set out snacks in the living room, thinking Mark might want something when he got home. He was supposed to be off early. He texted her once. "Be home by 6. Nothing else. 6 came and went. 7 came and went.
At 8:30 she heard the door unlock.
Mark stumbled in with 2 of his friends behind him, Tyler and Jason. All of them were loud and almost giddy in the way grown men get when they drink to avoid their own emptiness. "Emily," Jason called out as if he lived there, "you're always here, aren't you? Like part of the house." Tyler chuckled and dropped onto the couch. "She keeps things neat. That's a good quality in whatever she is." Emily kept her voice gentle. "Would you like water?" Mark waved her off. "She does this thing, guys, always acting like a caretaker. Relax, Emily. You're always so tense." She stayed still, letting their words pass over her like cold wind. She didn't want to provoke anything. The night already had the wrong kind of energy. Mark looked around and frowned. "Why isn't dinner ready?" "You didn't tell me you'd be home this late," she said. He snorted. "So? You couldn't just make something anyway? You're home all day."
Tyler laughed.
"Careful, Mark. You're expecting a lot. She's delicate." Emily heard the word and felt something shift inside her. A tiny crack in the shell she'd built around herself. Still, she kept her head down. Jason leaned forward, grinning. "Mark, man, you really married down. I mean, she's nice and all, but you could have had anyone." Mark didn't disagree. He sipped his drink and shrugged. "Yeah, well, she was easy." Her breath caught. Easy. He said it so casually, like she was a convenience, not a person. Tyler shook his head. "She should stay grateful. Man like you, she should worship the ground." Emily froze. She hadn't known they thought of her that way. Maybe she had known. Maybe she just hadn't wanted to hear it out loud. She stepped toward the kitchen to get them the water they hadn't really wanted. As she passed the doorway, she heard Mark lower his voice to the others.
"She doesn't have backbone, trust me. I've seen her mad maybe once. It was cute more than anything."
Jason laughed loud and hard. "Then train her, man. Make her into something. Or trade up. No shame in wanting someone exciting." Emily stayed just out of sight, her hand gripping the counter. She didn't know whether to confront them or pretend she hadn't heard. Her heart pounded in a way she didn't recognize. She wasn't hurt. She was waking up. She stepped back into the living room with the glasses of water. Mark glanced at her, then smirked at his friends as if to prove a point. "See? She listens." Tyler held out a hand and tilted his head at her. "Emily, you've got to understand how things work. Mark's the star. You're the support. That's just how it is in families like this." Her voice came out quieter than expected. "Families like this?" Tyler grinned. "Rich ones.
Mark laughed again, louder than necessary. Come on, don't make it weird. Tyler's right. You came from nothing. You got upgraded when you married me. A thin, ringing sound filled her ears. Not anger, not panic. Something sharper, something older. She placed the glasses on the table with steady hands. Tyler leaned back, watching her like she was something on TV. Don't look so shocked. You should learn your place, Emily. It'll make your life easier. Those words hit the last part of her she had tried so hard to keep buried. Learn your place. She almost laughed. She had spent years on mats and wooden floors learning balance, precision, control. Her place had never been at the feet of men who needed to belittle someone to feel tall. But none of them knew that. None of them knew anything about her past. Emily turned toward the hallway to collect herself, but Mark called after her. Don't walk away while we're talking. She stopped. His friends watched, waiting to see what she'd do. Emily lifted her chin a fraction, small, barely noticeable, but enough for something inside her to click into place. Mark, she said, I'm just getting your dinner. Jason snorted. Look at that. She even asks for permission with her eyes. Mark smirked at that, pleased. Emily stood still, a soft tremble under her calm surface. The room felt smaller. The air felt warmer. She sensed a shift in her own breathing, slow and steady like it used to be when she trained, when she prepared for someone to strike. She wasn't preparing now. She was remembering. And as she turned toward the kitchen again, quieter than before, she wondered how much more of this she was willing to take. That question stayed with her long after their laughter rose behind her, long after Mark joked again about marrying down, long after Tyler muttered that she should stay grateful. She didn't react. Not yet. But something old had begun to stir. The night dragged on in a haze of drunken noise. Emily moved in and out of the living room with small plates, napkins and water, doing things none of them asked for, but all of them expected. She kept her steps light and her breathing quiet, as if silence might shield her from the sharp edges in their voices. The men didn't notice how her hands tightened every time they laughed at something she didn't understand. Or maybe they did and simply enjoyed it. Mark kept drinking. By 10, he was past the point of pretending to be charming. He lounged on the couch with his legs stretched out, one arm behind Tyler, bragging about deals he hadn't closed and future plans he barely understood. Emily doesn't get any of this, he said at one point, waving a hand toward the ceiling. She doesn't really get me, but she tries, I'll give her that. Jason smirked. Good wives aren't supposed to get in the way. She's perfect for that. Mark laughed, shaking his head. Perfect? Let's not go that far. She's safe, predictable. She won't ever challenge me. Emily stepped back before they could see the way her face tightened. The old pieces of her, the ones she had buried so deep, pressed against her ribs, nudging, whispering, waking. When she returned with a bowl of chips she didn't care about, Tyler leaned forward and asked, Emily, you ever think about upgrading yourself? Like a makeover, a new wardrobe, something to make you look more interesting? Mark choked out a laugh. Tyler, stop. She'll take that seriously and start wearing glitter or something. Jason added, No, really, Em, try a little. Mark's a good-looking guy, you should keep up. She set the bowl down. I didn't know I wasn't keeping up. Oh, come on, Jason replied, stretching his arms behind his head. Don't be sensitive, we're helping. Helping. She almost smiled at that. They were helping themselves to her dignity, one cheap comment at a time.
Tyler raised his glass to her. Learn your place and stay grateful. Marriage will be easier. Her stomach twisted. She didn't trust herself to speak. She turned away. Mark noticed, and for a moment irritation flickered across his face. "Emily," he said sharply, "don't walk away when we're talking to you." "We?" she asked quietly. "I thought you wanted me to stay in the background." Tyler whistled under his breath, and Jason grinned like a kid who'd seen something spill. Mark narrowed his eyes. "Don't get smart," he warned. "It doesn't suit you." She didn't reply. She headed toward the kitchen again, but Tyler called after her, "Mark, she's talking back. Maybe she's finally growing a backbone." The men laughed as if that was the funniest thing they'd heard all night.
She closed the kitchen door behind her and leaned against it. Her pulse beat steady and strong, not shaky like the last time they pushed her too far. She remembered drilling stances until her feet went numb. She remembered holding poses until her muscles trembled. She remembered learning how to breathe through every emotion, anger, fear, exhaustion. She used to be good at that. She still was. She made tea, even though no one asked for it, and carried the tray back to the living room. The moment she stepped in, Jason slapped Mark's shoulder and pointed. "Perfect timing. We were just debating whether you're too soft or just too loyal." Emily lifted the tray. "Tea?" Tyler grabbed a cup. "You're sweet, Emily, really. I get why Mark keeps you around." Mark took his cup without thanking her. "She's quiet. That's the part I like." "Quiet wives are rare," Jason said. "Most try to run the house. Emily doesn't run anything." Mark laughed again. "Exactly. She's simple. She doesn't fight back." Emily stood there for a second longer than usual. Her voice stayed low, even. "I don't need to fight." Jason raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" "Because some things aren't worth the energy," she said. Mark leaned back, amused. "See? This is what I mean. She thinks she's wise. It's adorable." Something inside her, something long forgotten and sharp-edged, twisted at his tone. She left the room again before she said something he'd punish her for later. By the time 11 rolled around, the men were restless and louder. Tyler knocked over a glass. Jason spilled beer on the couch. Mark laughed so hard he nearly fell over, and Emily had no idea what was funny anymore. She walked back in to pick up the broken glass, crouching so she wouldn't step on any of it later. As she did, Mark said to his friends, "You know what I told them earlier? I married down." She froze.
Tyler laughed. "You really said that?"
"Of course," Mark said. "You all know it. She came from nothing. I upgraded her life." Jason added, "She should thank you every day." Mark nodded. "Exactly. She's lucky I chose her." The floor felt like it shifted a little under Emily's knees. She didn't make a sound. She kept picking up glass, one sharp piece at a time, careful not to cut herself. Tyler tilted his head at her. "Hear that, Emily? You hit the jackpot." Emily held the last piece of glass. It glittered under the lamp. Her hand didn't shake, not even once. "I heard," she said. Mark waved her off. "Don't get moody. We're joking." No, they weren't. She could tell. They meant every word. Jason stood and stretched. "Mark, man, I'm starving. What do you have to eat around here? Emily, be a good sport and fix something." Mark pointed toward the kitchen like he was directing a server. "Yeah, Em. Snacks. Something easy." She placed the glass on the table. Her shoulders rolled back a little, not enough for them to notice, but enough for her body to remember its old shape, its old readiness. "I'll see what I can do," she said quietly. Tyler laughed as she walked away. "Man, she listens well. You trained her right." Mark smiled proudly. "Told you, she stays in line."
Emily paused just outside the living room and closed her eyes. Something cracked in her chest, not breaking but releasing. She drew in a slow breath, deep and controlled, the way she had been taught long before she ever knew Mark existed. She stayed in the kitchen longer this time, giving herself a moment to settle the storm inside her. The voices from the living room filtered through the doorway, muffled but still sharp. Mark said, "She'll always be obedient, that's why I married her." Jason replied, "Yeah, but don't you ever want someone exciting? Someone who actually pushes back?" Mark hesitated. "Maybe, but Emily's safe." Safe. That word burned. She turned back toward the living room, only to find Tyler leaning in the kitchen doorway. He must have wandered in quietly. He studied her face. "Don't look so upset. We're just talking." She kept her expression still. "I'm not upset." "Good," he said, stepping inside. "Because truth doesn't have to hurt." He said it like he was giving advice, but it felt like something else. A warning? A threat? She couldn't tell. Tyler always had a way of making things sound almost kind right before twisting the knife. He glanced at the counter. "You making food?" "Yes." "Good girl," he said. Her jaw tightened, not visibly, not noticeably, but enough for her to feel it. Tyler stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Mark's got a lot going on. Don't make life harder for him. Know your role, that's all I'm saying." She knew exactly what he meant, and she knew he didn't say it for Mark's benefit. He said it because he liked the power of it. "I understand," she said. Tyler grinned, satisfied, and walked out. Emily set the food on a tray and carried it to the living room. The men barely looked at her. They were lost in some loud debate about business, throwing numbers and names around like confetti. She set the tray on the table quietly. Jason grabbed a handful of chips. "See? Perfect. Doesn't complain, doesn't argue." Mark nodded. "She's steady. It's what I needed." Emily stood there for a moment, watching him. Really watching him. The man she married looked nothing like the man in front of her. Somewhere along the way, she had convinced herself that patience would pull them back to center. Now she wasn't sure if there was a center left. Mark caught her staring. "What?" he asked, annoyed. "Why are you looking at me like that?" She blinked slowly. "No reason." "Then go," he said. "You're hovering." She stepped back. The room felt colder now, and not because of the air. Because of the truth she could no longer ignore. Mark didn't see her as a partner. He saw her as a shadow that followed him around. Jason turned to Mark with a grin. "Man, she's really quiet tonight. You sure she's okay?" Mark shrugged. "She's fine. She always is." Tyler raised a brow. "You sure about that?" Mark frowned. "What are you getting at?" Tyler shrugged too. "Just saying, even quiet wives can get tired. They can snap." Mark laughed loud and hard. "Emily, snap! She can't even raise her voice." The words hung in the air longer than they should have. Emily felt something flare inside her chest. Not anger, not fear. Recognition. A part of her she had hidden for years finally lifted its head. The men kept talking, kept laughing, kept peeling away at her dignity without even thinking. She stepped back once more. Then Mark said something that made everything sharpen. "She'll stay grateful.
he told them. She knows what she has. She knows she wouldn't survive without me. Emily felt the world shift. Slowly, steadily, like the ground making room for something heavy. She didn't speak again for the rest of the night. Not when they spilled more drinks. Not when Mark called for her. Not when Tyler made another comment about knowing her place. She waited. She breathed. She listened to the voice inside her she had ignored for years. By midnight, the men finally stumbled out the door. Mark waved goodbye, laughing as they left. When the door closed, the house went silent. Too silent. Mark turned to her with a tired grin. "You okay?" he asked, as if the whole night had been a joke they shared. She didn't answer. He shrugged and headed toward the stairs. "Clean up before you come up." She didn't move. When he was halfway up, she finally turned toward the hallway. Her steps weren't hesitant now. They were measured, steady, controlled. She went upstairs, not to their bedroom, to the bathroom. She closed the door, locked it, walked to the mirror. Her own reflection stared back at her, quiet, calm, and nothing like the woman they believed she was. Her voice came out low and certain. "You shouldn't have done that, Mark."
If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from and how did this story speak to you? Morning light slid across the bedroom floor, soft and pale, but Emily didn't feel softened by it. She moved quietly as always, yet something in her movements had changed. She didn't rush. She didn't shrink. She didn't fill the silence with small questions or soft suggestions. She simply existed in the room like someone who had finally stopped trying to disappear. Mark noticed almost immediately. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing the back of his neck, watching her the way a man might watch a dog that suddenly stopped obeying simple commands. Suspicious, curious, but not alarmed. Not yet. "You're up early," he said. "I usually am." He blinked. "Yeah, but you're different today." She didn't answer. She folded a blanket and placed it on the chair by the window. She didn't look shaken, didn't look nervous, just calm. Too calm. Mark frowned. "You're not still upset about last night, are you? You know how the guys get. We were just messing around." She looked at him then, a slow, level look. "I heard what you said." He swallowed once, then lifted his chin like he was sure charm could fix anything. Don't start. I was drunk. Everything gets exaggerated when guys drink." "Not everything." He let out a sigh, annoyed more than anything. "Look, if I said something you didn't like, let it go. You make too much out of little things." She didn't argue. She only said, "Okay," and turned to leave the room. The simplicity of the word unsettled him. "Wait, where are you going?" he asked. "To make breakfast." He watched her walk out and couldn't shake the feeling that something inside her had shifted, something he didn't recognize. But he told himself she was probably scared, maybe embarrassed. She'd get over it. She always did. He convinced himself of that as he showered, dressed, and headed downstairs. Emily didn't look at him when he entered the kitchen. She served him eggs and toast, the same way she had 100 mornings before, but her silence didn't feel like submission anymore. It felt like a boundary.
It felt like she was keeping her thoughts somewhere he couldn't reach. Mark poked at his food. "Are you mad? Just tell me if you're mad." "No," she said. "You're lying." She turned towards him, her face unreadable. "You don't really want the truth." He wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he didn't. He just grabbed his plate, stood up and said, "I'll eat in the office. I have calls." She didn't follow him with a question, didn't ask if he needed coffee, didn't move to pick up his chair the second he left. He walked out with a tight jaw, telling himself she'd crack soon. She always cracked. But she didn't. Not that morning, not that afternoon, and not that night. Over the next few days, her silence didn't break. It grew stronger, and the space between them grew with it. Mark couldn't explain why it bothered him. Emily had always been quiet, but this was different. This silence didn't bend. It didn't ask anything of him. It felt controlled, measured, almost like she was waiting for something. And Mark hated when he didn't know what someone was thinking. 2 nights later, curiosity got the better of him. He went through her phone while she was in the shower, expecting to find angry messages to a friend or a sister or anyone who might encourage her to leave him. But she hadn't texted anyone except one name. Sifu. He frowned at the screen. Why would she text someone named that? And only one short message. "Are you there?" He scrolled but found nothing else. No response, no thread, no explanation. He almost asked her about it, but then the shower turned off and he panicked. He tossed the phone back on her side of the bed and pretended to be adjusting his tie in the mirror. Emily stepped out, drying her hair with a towel. Mark kept his tone casual. "You didn't say good morning." "I didn't know you wanted me to." "Well, I do," he snapped, then tried to soften it. "I'm just saying, it's weird when you don't talk. You're usually nicer." She nodded, not apologetic, just acknowledging what he said. "I can say good morning," she said softly. "Good morning, Mark." He didn't know why that unsettled him even more. Later that afternoon, while straightening the living room, Emily moved a stack of magazines on the table. One slipped from the pile and landed half open on the floor. A white corner of an envelope peeked from the middle. She picked it up. It wasn't addressed to her. It wasn't even hidden well. Mark must have shoved it into the magazine in a rush. Inside was a printed receipt from a jewelry store. A necklace. Gold. Expensive. Not for her. She never received gifts that cost more than grocery money. Her heart went still. Another paper slipped out of the envelope. A small card with a handwritten note. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect. Rachel." Rachel. She knew the name. Of course she did. Linda mentioned her often as an example of the kind of woman Mark should have married. A wave of heat spread under Emily's skin, but she kept her breathing steady. She opened the jewelry store's website on her phone and searched the item number on the receipt. The necklace was beautiful, delicate, timeless, the kind of thing she would have worn to keep something meaningful close to her heart. But it wasn't for her. Her fingers hovered above the screen before she turned it off and placed the receipt back inside the magazine. She didn't cry. She didn't sit down or gasp or cover her mouth the way a woman in a movie might. She just stood there, letting the truth settle in quietly. Mark wasn't just cruel, he was unfaithful, and he hadn't even bothered to hide it well. That night he came home late. Again. He smelled like cologne that didn't belong to him, and carried a confident smile, the kind that came from spending time with someone who adored him. Emily served him dinner without a word. He didn't notice the difference. He was too busy texting someone under the table. She didn't ask who. Later, when he got up from the couch to get a drink, his phone lit up on the cushion beside her. She didn't reach for it. She didn't need to. A preview of the message glowed bright and cruel. Miss you already. Next time, don't rush home. Ah. He came back before the screen dimmed, and her eyes were calm when he sat beside her. You okay? He asked. I'm fine. You seem cold. She took a slow breath. Mark, would you tell me the truth if I asked you something? Depends what you ask. She nodded. Then never mind. He frowned, confused, irritated. Then he shrugged and went back to his phone, choosing whatever conversation he was having with Rachel over the woman sitting 2 feet away. Emily watched him for a long moment, not with jealousy, not even pain, with clarity. The next morning, Linda arrived unannounced, walking into the house like she owned it. She always acted like that, but today she carried a certain urgency. Emily, she said briskly, we need to talk. Emily placed a folded towel on the table and turned to her. About what? The property your parents left you. Emily stilled. What about it? Linda gave her a tight smile. You know Mark has plans. Big ones. He's close to a major promotion, but he needs liquidity to show the board. That little property would help stabilize things. Stabilize what? His image, Linda said, as though it were obvious. You should sign it over. It's just sitting there. Emily felt her chest tighten around a different kind of pain. My parents saved for years to buy that land, she said quietly. It's all I have left from them. Yes, sentimental value, Linda said, waving her hand. But marriage is about supporting your husband. Mark needs this. And what do I need? Emily asked softly. Linda blinked, surprised by the question. Don't start acting difficult. You owe him loyalty. Emily swallowed a breath. I'm not signing it over. The air shifted. Linda's expression hardened. How ungrateful. Mark has given you a life you didn't have before, and you can't sacrifice one little property for his future. Emily shook her head. My answer is no. Linda stepped closer, voice sharp. Careful, Emily. A woman who refuses to support her husband often finds herself without one. Emily held her gaze. Then he'd prove exactly why I shouldn't sign. Linda stared at her for several seconds, thrown off by the calm tone. Then she turned away with a scoff. When Mark hears about this, he won't be happy. Emily didn't flinch. He's already unhappy. Linda froze for a moment, then left without another word. Later that afternoon, as Emily stepped outside to check the mail, she found Tyler leaning against Mark's car in the driveway. She stiffened. Tyler almost never came alone. He gave her a slow nod. Emily? She closed the mailbox. Is Mark home? No. I came to talk to you. About what? Tyler pushed his hands into his pockets. He looked uneasy for once, like he wasn't sure how to start. Look, he said, I don't usually get involved in other people's mess, but I think you deserve a heads up. She didn't speak. She didn't encourage him. She just waited. Mark's seeing someone, he said bluntly. Emily stayed still. I know. That surprised him. You do? She nodded once.
Tyler cleared his throat. Well, it's serious. Serious enough that he's planning to use her family connections to get a promotion. The kind that changes everything. Emily didn't blink. Go on. Once he gets it, Tyler said, he's going to divorce you. The air felt heavier, but Emily stayed steady. Tyler looked down at the ground, then back at her. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I don't know. Maybe I feel guilty. Or maybe I'm tired of watching him walk all over you.
Emily didn't trust that explanation. Tyler didn't help people unless it benefited him somehow. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing, he said, but his eyes said more. Just be ready. She held his gaze for a long moment. I am. Tyler stepped back. Emily, whatever you're planning, be careful. Mark doesn't handle surprises well. She almost smiled. Neither do I. Tyler looked unsettled as he left, like he'd seen something in her face he hadn't expected. When she stepped back inside the house, the quiet felt sharper, cleaner. Something inside her had finished waking up, and the world around her was about to feel the shift. Mark came home late that night. He didn't greet her. He barely looked at her. He tossed his keys on the counter and said, I cut off your access to the card. You spend too easily. She stared at him. On what? House stuff, he said. Things we don't need. But you bought a necklace, she said softly. He froze. Then he recovered and glared at her. Don't start. I don't have time for your moods. She didn't argue. She didn't raise her voice. She simply stepped aside while he walked past her. He didn't know a storm was building behind her quiet eyes. Not yet. But he would. Soon. And much sooner than he expected. The next morning, Emily woke before the alarm, though sleep had barely touched her. She moved through the kitchen quietly, not because she wanted to keep peace, but because silence gave her space to think. Real thinking. Not the kind she used to do, trying to guess what mood Mark would be in, or how to avoid upsetting him. This was different. This was planning. Mark came downstairs half-dressed, scrolling through his phone. He didn't greet her. He didn't even seem irritated for once. He looked almost triumphant. Big day, he muttered, pouring himself coffee she already made. She didn't ask what that meant. She already knew. Rachel's family had connections, and Mark was grabbing them the way a drowning man grabbed anything that floated. He took his mug without a thank you and walked out the door humming. Actually humming. The sound twisted something in her chest. Anger, maybe, but not wild anger. Controlled. Focused. When the door shut, she breathed out the air she'd been holding. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. She used to hate that. Now she used it. She cleaned slowly, letting her mind circle the same truth over and over. He planned to replace her. He planned to profit from her. He planned to humiliate her before he threw her away. She wouldn't let him. Not anymore. Around noon, she went upstairs to gather laundry. When she opened the closet, a faint smell drifted out, a perfume she didn't wear. She stepped closer. The sleeve of one of Mark's shirts had a shimmer on it. Glitter. Very fine. Very expensive. Rachel. Emily stood still, the shirt hanging from her fingers. She thought about the nights Mark came home late, claiming he had meetings that never existed. She thought of the necklace receipt. She thought about Linda's pressure, Tyler's warning, the text preview from R.
She folded the shirt slowly and placed it on the bed.
There was no more room for doubt. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. A message from an unknown number lit the screen. "Dinner tonight? My father will be there. Don't be late. R." Emily stared at the text for a full minute before it clicked. Mark had left his phone logged into their shared calendar, and Rachel must have assumed the synced notifications went to him alone. He wasn't even smart enough to cover his tracks. She deleted the message without reacting. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake. Her breathing stayed steady. She had learned to breathe through everything. At 3, Linda arrived again without knocking. Emily didn't bother pretending to be surprised. "Where's Mark?" Linda asked, brushing past her into the kitchen. "At work." "As usual," Linda muttered. "I need to speak with you. We didn't finish yesterday's conversation." "We finished," Emily said quietly. "No, we didn't," Linda snapped. She set her purse on the counter and folded her arms. "If you refuse to sign that property over, you're sabotaging your own husband. Do you want him to fail? Does he want me to succeed?" Emily asked. Linda blinked, thrown off. "Don't twist things. I'm not." Linda leaned forward. "Sign it, Emily. It's the right thing to do." "It's not right for me." "So that's it? You're choosing a useless piece of land over your marriage?" "My marriage isn't being threatened by land," Emily said softly. Linda tightened her jaw. "You're becoming disrespectful." Emily met her eyes. "I'm becoming honest." The words landed like a slap, one Linda hadn't expected. "You'll regret this," Linda said, snatching her purse from the counter. "Mark won't stay with a woman who stands in his way." Emily looked at her calmly. "Then I guess we'll see." Linda stomped out, slamming the door behind her. The echo rang through the house long after.
She was gone. By early evening, the house felt heavy with anticipation. Emily sensed something building, something close, something sharp. She felt like she was standing between two storms, Mark's and her own. Mark came home at 6, dressed nicer than usual. He smelled like new cologne, the kind men wear when they want to impress someone who isn't their wife. He walked into the kitchen like he expected applause. "I'm throwing a party tonight," he announced. She turned toward him. "Tonight?" "Yeah, last-minute thing. Some colleagues are coming, and Rachel's father. This could be important for work, so don't make a big deal out of it." There it was, the confirmation. He wasn't even pretending anymore. Emily kept her tone neutral. "You didn't plan it with me." "I don't need to plan things with you," he said, opening the fridge without looking at her. "Just get everything ready. You know how to do that." She didn't respond. He turned, finally noticing her silence. "Don't start this again. You're acting, I don't know, difficult." She looked at him, the same calm she used in sparring when she let her opponent think she had nothing left. "Acting difficult," she repeated softly. "Yes," he snapped. "I don't need attitude right now." She held her breath for a second, then let it out steady. "Then don't talk to me like I work for you." He blinked hard, stunned by the simplicity of her words. He opened his mouth, closed it, then scoffed. "You're unbelievable. I swear, Emily, you're becoming more trouble than you're worth. Just get the house ready." He walked away before she could reply, or maybe because he didn't want to hear one. By 8, the house was full. Laughter, glasses clinking, the smell of catered appetizers Mark pretended to have made himself. Emily moved between guests quietly, placing napkins, refilling glasses, keeping out of the way. That was her assigned role, silent help. Mark didn't acknowledge her except to gesture where he wanted things. At one point he wrapped an arm around Rachel's father, guiding him toward the bar as if he owned the place. Rachel came too, floating beside her father with a confident smile, and Emily froze. Around Rachel's neck hung the gold necklace. The same design, the same engraving on the clasp. The necklace Mark bought. Emily stared for only a second. Then she turned away before anyone could read her expression. She walked into the hallway and the voices inside the living room faded behind her. Her pulse beat steady, not fast, not shaky, controlled. She heard laughter again, Mark's most of all. She stepped back toward the doorway just as Mark said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Don't mind Emily. She's fragile. Always has been. Sweet girl, but no backbone." The guests laughed politely. Rachel smiled like she agreed.
Emily didn't move. Then Mark added, "Honestly, I think she was made to be quiet. Some people just aren't built for anything else." Another wave of laughter rippled through the room. Emily felt the heat rise again, the same heat she used to feel right before a match. The breath in, breath out timing she had mastered years ago slid back into place. She stepped forward, trying to collect plates, but Mark waved her off. No, Emily. This is grown-up talk. Go do something you're good at." Something inside her clicked. A piece she'd kept buried. She placed the plates down slowly. "Of course," she said, but something in her tone made Rachel glance at her with curiosity, and maybe a little fear. Emily moved to the kitchen doorway, just far enough to be unnoticed, close enough to hear every word. That's when Jason's voice drifted out. "So what's next? You really gonna keep her around if things work out with Rachel's family?" Mark laughed louder than he should have. "No, I'll humiliate her one last time, then kick her out. It'll be easy. She doesn't fight back." The room went silent, except for the low chuckling of a few men who found cruelty entertaining. Emily didn't blink. She absorbed every word. He'd humiliate her, then discard her, like she was nothing. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her phone, and unlocked it with steady fingers. Her breath stayed slow and even. She opened her messages. The contact name waited at the top. Sifu. She typed 3 words. "I'm ready now," and hit send. Mark didn't come home the morning after the party, or the next morning, or the one after that. Emily woke up to an empty bed and a quiet house, but the quiet didn't calm her anymore. It sat heavy on her chest, too aware, too sharp. She moved through the day with slow, steady breaths, trying to hold herself together, even as something inside her warned that everything she knew was about to fall apart. On the 4th day, a knock sounded at the door. It wasn't Mark. It was a courier. "Delivery for Emily Carter," he said, holding out a thick envelope. Her stomach tightened when she saw the return address, a law office. She signed for it, closed the door, and stood there with the envelope in her hand for a full minute before she opened it. Inside were divorce papers, already signed, already filed. Her name typed in neatly under respondent, like she was a detail he wanted to get rid of cleanly. Her hands didn't shake. That surprised her. She looked at the signature, Mark's, and felt only a cold wave of clarity. So this was it. Not a conversation, not a decision made together, not even an argument, just papers, filed behind her back as if she were a stranger. She sank into a chair and read line after line. He wanted the house, the accounts, the vehicles, He even listed her parents' property under assets to be surrendered upon dissolution of marriage. She exhaled, slow and steady. He wanted everything. He wanted her to leave with nothing. By noon, Linda called. "You received the documents, I assume?" she said, without sounding even a little apologetic. Emily didn't answer at first. She listened to the faint clinking of dishes in the background, imagining Linda having lunch comfortably while discussing Emily's life like it was a business matter. "Yes," Emily finally said. "Well," Linda continued, "it's for the best. Mark deserves someone who matches his ambition, and you'll be fine if you accept the terms quickly. Dragging it out helps no one." Emily stared at the wall. "Did you know about this?" "Of course I did. He talked to me before he filed." A dull pain spread in Emily's chest, not sharp, just heavy. "Why didn't he talk to me?" "He didn't want a scene," Linda replied. "You're emotional. This way is cleaner." Cleaner. Emily held the phone tighter. "He listed my parents' property." "Yes, it's more useful in his hands. You weren't doing anything with it." Emily swallowed hard. "It's mine." "It was," Linda corrected. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Then the line went dead. Emily sat very still. Her breath came deep, slow, controlled. Too controlled. She recognized that breathing. It was the kind she used before sparring, when she needed her mind to get quiet enough to react without thinking. Except this time, there was no strike to avoid, no match. Just a life falling apart. She didn't cry. She wished she could. Crying would have been a release. Instead, she folded the papers, placed them on the table, and stood up with a strange sense of balance, as if her body understood something her mind hadn't accepted yet. That afternoon, Mark finally came home. He walked in like nothing had happened, tossing his keys down, humming. He smelled like a cologne she didn't recognize. He wore a shirt she hadn't washed. When he saw her, his smile faded. "You got the papers?" "Yes." "You don't look surprised." "I'm not." He gave a short, annoyed laugh. "Well, good. Saves us both trouble." She watched him walk to the fridge, open it, and pull out a bottle of sparkling water, one she'd bought, one he'd never thanked her for. "Rachel's moving into our circle," he said casually, twisting the top. "My colleagues like her. She fits better. You'll see her around." The words landed like cold stones in her chest. He wasn't even pretending to feel guilty. "Why now?" she asked. He shrugged. "Because it's time. And because you stopped being easy to manage." Her breath caught. Not because of the cruelty, she was used to cruelty, but the honesty shocked her. "Easy to manage," she repeated quietly. "It's not personal," he said, taking a drink. "Marriage didn't work. You're too quiet, too flat. Rachel's different. She challenges me, but in a fun way." Emily felt something under her ribs pulled tight. He continued talking as if he was discussing something boring like paperwork. "Also, the promotion is almost set. Her father's impressed with me, so the timing works out." She didn't move, didn't blink. "And the property?" she asked. "I need it," he said. "You don't. Stop being dramatic." Dramatic. It almost made her laugh. He set down the bottle and walked past her, as if she were part of the furniture. "We'll have guests tonight," he added. "Guys from work. Housekeeper's off, so you handle everything." Then he went upstairs without waiting for her response.
Emily stood there, hands resting on the counter, eyes closed. Everything felt wrong. Everything felt heavy. Everything felt finished. But not the way he imagined. By 6 that evening, bottles lined the kitchen counter. Mark's friends filled the living room, laughing, drinking, spreading out like they owned every piece of space in the house. Emily moved between them, placing bowls of snacks, refilling glasses, trying to stay invisible. She heard one man whisper, "Where's Rachel? I thought she'd be here." Another replied, "She doesn't want to meet the wife yet. After the papers finalised, maybe." The wife. Emily felt her throat tighten. She set down a plate before she dropped it. Mark saw her pass and smirked, whispering something to Jason. Jason laughed, glanced at her, and shook his head. She didn't want to be in the room anymore. She turned toward the hallway, toward even a second of space to breathe. But Mark stepped in front of her, blocking her path. "You're not done," he said. "I need a minute." "No," he said, "you don't." He leaned in, low enough that only she could hear. "Don't embarrass me tonight. Serve the
Drinks." She swallowed. "Mark, please, stop talking back," he snapped. "It doesn't suit you." She stepped aside, forcing herself to keep her breath even. If she didn't, everything inside her might break out as something she couldn't take back. She picked up a tray, carried glasses, handed them out with steady hands. But the men noticed her silence in a way they never had before. "Look at her," one of them said. "She's like a ghost. Does she even talk?" Jason laughed. "She's pathetic. Like a charity case someone forgot to return." Emily lowered her gaze. "That's enough," Mark said, but not in her defense. He was laughing too. "She can hear you." Jason shrugged. "What? It's not like she'll do anything." They all laughed. Emily felt the breath in her chest start to shake. She forced it to settle. The room felt too small. Their voices felt too loud. She turned again toward the hallway. Mark grabbed her wrist. "Don't walk away," he said, his voice sharp with alcohol. "You're serving." "I need air," she whispered. "You don't get to choose that right now." She tried to pull her hand back. "Mark, let go." Instead, he shoved her away from the hallway. Her shoulder hit the edge of the counter. A few men laughed. "Easy, man. Don't break her," Jason joked. Mark stepped toward her, his jaw tight. "Stop acting like you're the victim here." "I didn't say anything." "That's the problem. You never say anything." Then, before she even had time to brace, he raised his hand and slapped her, harder than he ever had before. Her head jerked to the side. The sound echoed through the room. The men gasped, then burst into uneasy laughter, not sure whether to enjoy the show or pretend they were uncomfortable. Mark shook out his hand like she had hurt him. "See? No fight in her at all." Emily tasted metal. Her cheek burned. Her vision blurred for a second. She didn't raise her hand to her face. She didn't stumble. She didn't respond at all. And somehow that made him even angrier. "Say something," he demanded. But she couldn't. Not because she was afraid, because the world around her had gone strangely quiet. Like her body had moved somewhere deeper, somewhere protected, somewhere waiting. Behind them, Tyler's voice cut through the laughter, slurred, unsteady. "Mark, man, you didn't have to hit her." Mark scoffed. "Don't start." Tyler stepped closer, holding onto the wall for balance. "No, I mean it. She already knows." Emily looked at him, confused. "Knows what?"
she asked softly. Tyler blinked at her, his pupils unfocused. That Mark never loved you. The room went still. Mark turned on him. Shut up. But Tyler kept talking. He was too drunk to stop, too guilty, too honest. He picked you because you were quiet, easy to control. He told us that the night before the wedding.
Emily's breath caught. And his mum, Tyler added, rubbing his forehead. Linda, she said he needed to break your spirit, make you sign over that land. Emily felt the world tilt. Her hand gripped the edge of the counter to stay upright. She said, Tyler whispered, quiet girls don't fight back. So Mark should make sure you stayed that way. Emily stared at him, unable to speak. Her marriage was not a partnership. It was a plan. She wasn't a wife. She was a target, a strategy, a controlled variable. Every insult, every dismissal, every restriction. It had all been intentional. Mark stepped toward Tyler, furious. Stop talking or I'll... But Emily didn't hear the rest. She walked out of the room, slowly, quietly, without a single word. No one followed her. She stepped into the cold garage and closed the door behind her. The silence hit her like a wave.
She sank down onto a small stool in the corner, hugging her arms around herself because she didn't know what else to hold on to. She sat there shaking, not from fear but from the weight of everything collapsing at once. Years of swallowing her voice, years of shrinking, years of choosing peace over herself. Her marriage was a lie. Her sacrifices meant nothing. Her silence had been mistaken for weakness. She felt something inside her crack wide open, a crack so deep she wasn't sure she could ever close it again. The garage was dim, only one small bulb flickering overhead. She closed her eyes, tried to breathe, tried to find that steady center she used to have. But her breaths came ragged now, her chest ached, her eyes burned. When she finally stood, her legs felt unsteady. She reached for the shelf beside her to keep from falling. Her fingers brushed something wooden. She looked down. An old wooden box sat on the shelf, covered in dust. She hadn't opened it in years, not since the night she walked away from that part of her life. Her past, her discipline, her strength, her true self. She pulled it down carefully and set it on her lap. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside, her martial arts sashes were folded with exact care, yellow, green, blue, brown, and the highest one she ever earned, dark and worn from years of use. Beneath them lay a small photograph, her and her Sifu, standing side by side. Her face younger, steadier, proud. His expression calm, knowing. A piece of her she had buried so deep that Mark never even glimpsed it, rose from the box like a forgotten flame. Her breathing slowed, her hands steadied. She gripped the highest sash tightly, feeling the strength in the fabric, the weight of her training, the truth of who she once was. She wasn't weak. She was never weak. She just forgot herself. Not anymore. She stood, holding the sash in both hands. The garage felt different now, not dark, but waiting. Her voice came out low, steady, unrecognizable even to her own ears. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "you'll see who I am." The next day moved like the slow pull of a tide, steady and certain, dragging everything toward a moment Emily could feel in her bones. She woke before sunrise, Not with fear, not with dread, but with clarity. Her body felt different, lighter and sharper at once, like something old and strong inside her had finally settled back into place. Mark was already downstairs making noise in the kitchen. He never cooked, so the banging of cabinets told her he was stressed. She walked down the hallway, calm, composed, sash tucked back into the wooden box, now hidden in the closet again, but not forgotten. Never forgotten. When she reached the stairs, she heard voices. Rachel's voice, low, sweet, confident. Emily paused. She wasn't supposed to be there this early, not unless Mark invited her. Then she heard him. Tonight has to be perfect. My career depends on this. Rachel replied, My father's already impressed. Just don't let your wife ruin anything.
Emily descended the stairs slowly. Her footsteps made no sound, not because she tried to be quiet, but because old habits returned naturally. Precision lived in her bones. Mark turned at the sound of her entering the kitchen. His face tightened. Oh, you're awake. Rachel gave Emily a small, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes.
Good morning.
Emily nodded. Good morning. Mark crossed his arms. We have an important dinner tonight. Big deal. My future depends on it.
I know,
Emily said. You stay upstairs, he ordered. Stay out of the way. Don't embarrass me. Emily looked at him calmly.
I hear you.
He misread that look. He thought she agreed. He thought she'd obey like always. Good. He turned back to Rachel, already moving on. We'll finalize everything after tonight. My partners are coming, her father, a few friends. This will cement everything. Rachel glanced at Emily once more, studying her the way someone studies a quiet animal that think won't bite. Then she brushed past and followed Mark out the door. Emily stood in the kitchen long after they left. The sunlight through the window felt warm on her arms, grounding her. Her breath stayed slow and even. Tonight, Mark wanted her hidden. Tonight, she would do the opposite. She cleaned the counters. She prepared her clothes. She gathered the recordings she saved, the ones she'd captured quietly over the past months, before she even admitted to herself she'd need them. And when afternoon came, she sat on the floor of the bedroom, closed her eyes, and breathed the way her seafood taught her. In through the nose, deep into the stomach, out slow, smoothing the edges of every emotion. When she opened her eyes, she felt ready. The house began to fill at 6. Laughter drifted up the staircase, polite and measured at first. Emily could tell which voices belonged to Mark's colleagues, which belonged to his friends, and which belonged to Rachel's father, whose tone was formal and firm. She stayed upstairs for the first 30 minutes, not because Mark told her to, but because she wanted him fully settled in the illusion that she was following orders. When she finally rose to her feet, the house felt different. The noise below carried the same arrogance as every gathering Mark hosted, voices with too much confidence and too little empathy. She walked to the top of the stairs. Every step she took felt deliberate. Her posture straightened, her shoulders relaxed, not tense. Her breathing stayed even, every inhale and exhale grounding her deeper. She stepped onto the landing in full view of the dining area. Mark saw her first. His face flashed with shock, then anger. "Emily, what are you doing? I told you to stay upstairs." She kept walking. His guests turned to look, the room falling quiet in a slow ripple. Rachel's father blinked, startled. Rachel stiffened beside him. Mark's friends smirked, already expecting a show. Emily reached the bottom step. Mark stormed toward her. "Go upstairs, right now." She didn't move. No. He grabbed her arm, or he tried to. Her body reacted before her thoughts did. A pivot, a small shift of weight, a movement so efficient it looked casual. His hand slid past her arm and caught nothing but air. He stumbled a step forward, thrown off balance. A few people laughed under their breath, assuming he was clumsy. Mark spun back around on her, face red. What the hell was that? A mistake, she said softly. Not hers. His. Rachel's father cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the tension. Is everything all right here? Mark forced a smile, gripping the back of a chair to steady himself. Yeah, sorry. My wife's just tired. She's not good with people. Emily looked at him, calm. You don't get to speak for me. The room froze. No one had ever heard her say something like that, not in that tone. It wasn't loud. It wasn't shaking. It was simply firm. Mark clenched his fists. Emily, stop. He walked toward her again, faster this time, reaching for her shoulder. She stepped aside. Not big movements, not dramatic ones. Small pivots, practiced footwork, enough to make him miss again. He looked foolish. Guests exchanged glances. Rachel's father frowned. Mark lunged a third time, furious. Emily stepped back half an inch, guided his momentum with one simple movement of her hand, barely a touch, and he stumbled harder, catching himself on the edge of the dining table. Glasses rattled. A plate slid. Someone whispered, "What was that?" Someone else murmured, "She moved like she knew where he was going before he did." Mark straightened, embarrassed and angry. "Stop moving like—" But he came at her again, and this time his stumble was worse. He landed against the wall with a thud and a groan. Jason barked a laugh before catching himself. Tyler covered his mouth. Mark's humiliation bloomed across his face. "I swear, Emily," he hissed, "if you make me look stupid." "You're doing that yourself," she said. A hush traveled through the room like a cold wind. Tyler muttered, "Holy hell." That was when Mark's friends jumped in. Jason stepped forward first, trying to act playful but irritated. "Hey, Emily, relax. We get it. You're upset. Just go upstairs and let Mark handle the real conversation." She didn't respond. Tyler tried next. "Come on, don't make this a scene. You don't want to embarrass yourself." She took a single step forward. Both men flinched back without meaning to. She didn't attack, didn't raise her hands, but her presence changed the air. A steadiness, something controlled and centered, the stillness right before a storm breaks. Mark, humiliated beyond reason, lunged again. She didn't dodge this time. Instead, she guided him with one small shift of her hip. He flew past her shoulder and crashed into Jason, sending both men stumbling into a chair that scraped loudly across the floor. Gasps filled the room. Tyler tried to grab her arm too, but she moved his wrist aside with a gentle push that sent him losing balance and dropping into the couch. Not hurt, not struck, just completely dismantled, and every eye in the room watched the truth unfold. She was not weak. She was not fragile. She was not silent because she was scared. She was silent because she chose to be. Rachel's father stood taller, studying Emily with new respect and Mark with new doubt. Rachel's face drained of colour. Mark scrambled to his feet, hair dishevelled, breath sharp. "Stop it! Stop making me look like a fool!" "You did that," Emily said quietly. He stared at her, shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "What are you?" "A wife," she said,
who finally stopped pretending.
The room had gone completely still. Mark looked around and saw the judgment gathering in every pair of eyes. His reputation, the thing he cared about more than anything, had started to crumble right in front of him. "You think this proves something?" he spat. "You think humiliating me makes you look strong?" Emily reached into her pocket. "Not strong," she said. "Just honest." She held up her phone. Mark froze. Every man in the room shifted uneasily. "What is that?" Mark demanded. Emily tapped the screen, and before he could grab it, before anyone could stop her, Rachel's voice played from the speaker. "I can't wait until she's gone. Then everything will be simple." A few people gasped. Mark lunged. "Turn that off!" She stepped back smoothly. Another recording played, Mark's voice this time, drunken and cruel. "I'll humiliate her one last time before I get rid of her." A murmur rippled through the guests. Then another recording. "I married down. She was easy to control. Quiet girls don't fight back." And another. "Just break her spirit, Mark. Make her sign over the land." Linda's voice. Rachel's father's expression hardened. Mark lunged again, desperate now, reaching for the phone like grabbing it could erase everything the room had already heard. His fingers never reached it. Emily shifted her weight and stepped to the side in one smooth motion. His own momentum carried him past her, and he stumbled into the edge of the table so hard a wine glass shattered on the floor. He stayed there for a moment, gripping the table, breathing heavy, humiliated beyond anything he'd ever imagined. Rachel's father stared at him with a cold, sharp expression. "You said you admired integrity," he said quietly. "Now I hear you plotting behind your wife's back, cheating, and manipulating her family's assets." Mark swallowed hard. "No, this is taken out of context. She's twisting things." Emily pressed another button. Linda's voice filled the room again. "Break her spirit. Make her easy to handle." Rachel's father went still. Rachel's face drained even more, and for once she couldn't look at Emily. She looked away, ashamed, not for what she'd done, but for being exposed. Emily turned off the recording. The silence that followed was thick and cold. Mark pushed himself up, pointing a shaking finger at her. You've been recording me, spying on me. You're insane." She stayed calm. "I protected myself." "That's not protection. That's betrayal." She raised her eyes to his, steady and clear. "You betrayed this marriage years ago. I'm just telling the truth." Rachel stepped back from Mark as if she suddenly realized he was a burning building she needed to escape. His friends shifted uncomfortably. None of them moved to help him. None of them defended him. None of them even looked at him with sympathy. Mark looked around, seeing himself alone for the first time. Rachel's father was the one to break the silence. "This partnership we discussed," he said, "is over. I don't trust you. I don't trust your judgment. And I don't want my family tied to someone who treats his wife like this." Mark's mouth dropped open. "Sir, please, listen." But Rachel's father turned away. Rachel did too. Without a word, she walked toward the door. Mark reached for her. Rachel, wait, we can talk." She looked back at him with a disgusted expression Emily had never seen on her face before. "You told me she was pathetic. You told me she was weak, and I believed you. But look at you, Mark." She let her gaze drop over him, sweating, shaken, desperate. "You're the weakest person in the room." Then she walked out the door. Her father followed her without another glance at Mark. Mark stood frozen, his hand still hovering in the air, his chest rising and falling in panicked breaths. Jason and the others backed away, pretending they hadn't been part of anything. Tyler didn't even look at Mark. He just shook his head. "Man, you did this to yourself." And he left the room too. One by one, every guest followed, murmuring apologies to Emily as they slipped through the doorway. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because they finally saw her strength, and were afraid of what it revealed about their own cowardice. Soon it was just Emily and Mark in the room. The silence stretched. Mark wiped his face, trying to pull himself together, trying to regain control. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Emily, come on. You can't do this. You're overreacting." She didn't answer. He stepped toward her, slower this time, not with anger, but with fear. "We can talk about this. We can fix this." "Fix?" she said softly. "You filed divorce papers without telling me." "That was a mistake. I was stressed. Everyone makes mistakes." "You slapped me." He hesitated. "You provoked me. You cheated." He winced. "It didn't mean anything." "You said you married down." He closed his eyes. "Emily, you told your friends you would humiliate me before kicking me out." His shoulders fell. "You tried to take my parents' property." He didn't deny it. "You called me weak." He finally looked up, tears welling in his eyes, not from remorse, but from fear of losing his reputation, his comfort, his control. Please. You're my wife." "No," she said, her voice low and certain. "Not anymore." She reached into a drawer behind her and pulled out the divorce papers he filed. She placed them on the table. She slid them toward him. "I'll sign," she said. His eyes widened with hope. "But on my terms." He stared at her. "Your terms?" "Yes." "I'm not agreeing to anything unreasonable." She laid a second paper on top, a modification, a clause guaranteeing her financial support due to emotional and marital misconduct, a full relinquishment of her property rights, a penalty for concealed adultery. Mark read it. His hands began to shake. I can't sign that." "You will," she said. "And if I don't?" he asked, voice breaking. She lifted her phone again, tapping the recordings folder. He flinched. His career was gone. His future was collapsing. And Emily held the last thread. "If you don't sign," she said, "these recordings become public. And then the fallout won't stop at tonight." He stared at her, eyes wide, chest tight. "How did you—" He swallowed. "How long have you been planning this?" "A while," she said. She didn't elaborate. She didn't tell him she'd created backup accounts after he shut off her cards, that she'd kept copies of every document he hid, that she'd spoken with an attorney, quietly, months ago, when his first lie burned deeper than the rest. She didn't explain that every insult hardened her resolve. Every dismissal reminded her of who she once was. Every cruel joke sharpened the edges of her strength. He didn't deserve to know the details. "You can sign now," she said, "or I can destroy what's left of your reputation. Your choice." His face contorted with anger, fear, desperation. "Please, Emily," he whispered, "don't do this." She handed him a pen. "You did it," she said. "I'm just finishing it." Mark's hand shook as he scribbled his signature. The moment his pen left the page, something in the air shifted. He had no power over her anymore. Not legally,
Not financially, not emotionally. Emily folded the papers, put them neatly into a folder, and looked at him with a calm he couldn't comprehend. "I'll leave tonight," she said. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. "Where will you go?" She didn't answer, because where she was going wasn't his concern.
She walked toward the stairs, quiet as ever. But this time her silence wasn't for him. It was for herself. For the version of her that had waited years to stand up. For the strength she had reclaimed, piece by piece. Upstairs she packed a small suitcase, clothes, personal items, the wooden box. When she held the highest level sash in her hands, something inside her softened. Not in weakness, but in certainty. She slipped it into the suitcase gently. Her phone buzzed. A message from Sifu. "Tomorrow, first class. Are you ready?" Emily's breath steadied. One simple reply. Yes. She closed the suitcase, took one last look at the house that had held so much pain, and walked down the stairs. Mark stood at the bottom, eyes hollow. "Emily, please don't go." She walked past him without slowing. "Goodbye, Mark." He didn't follow her. He simply watched the door close behind her as the life he'd controlled slipped out of his hands forever. Outside, the night air felt cool and clean. She stepped onto the driveway with steady steps, the weight of the suitcase balancing her, grounding her. She wasn't leaving broken. She wasn't leaving small. She was leaving whole. In the distance, the sky stretched wide and open, and for the first time in years she felt the world opening with it. Strength wasn't loud. It didn't need shouting. It didn't need a raised fist. Sometimes the quietest person in the room was the one holding the most power, and the woman they tried to break was the one who would teach them the meaning of regret. Emily walked forward into her new life, the life she chose, the life she earned, and the life she was finally ready to live.